Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of our TGT podcast series. We've not done one of these in quite some time, and what a day to return to the show in particular. Of course, big news dropping this afternoon as it is confirmed that Arsenal have indeed agreed a deal with Gabriel Jesus and Manchester City to complete a £45 million transfer of the Brazilian forward who will become an Arsenal player next season. To do so and chat about that and a lot more as well, I'm going to be joined by as many as 6 of our Discord members over the next hour, splitting the show into 2 halves, with our first 3 guests on for the first half an hour and then our next 3 guests on for the second half. Good afternoon, everybody joining us in the chat box. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you happen to be in the world, of course. Do make sure you drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new around here, with those notifications turned on so you never miss any show whatsoever. I mean, if you don't turn them on, you won't know when we're dropping these random ones like we've done over the last few days or so. But without further ado, let's introduce to you my guests for the first half an hour of today's show. First of all, it's Jordan. How you doing, mate? You good?
Hey, good to be here. Glad to be on again.
Good stuff indeed. Let's bring in our next. I believe we've got a couple of debuts coming on today's show, which is also great. We're also joined by David. How you doing, David? You good?
Yeah, I'm straight, guys. How we doing?
Very good indeed, my friends. Very good indeed. And making up our panel of 4, we've also got Ogie. How you doing, Ogie? You good?
Yeah, good. Pleasure. Nice to be here.
Absolutely. Good to have some debuts on the show as always. So we kick off, I think, in the obvious place, Jordan, which is reaction to this news that Gabriel Jesus will become an Arsenal player. So talk me through what you're feeling right now.
I'm honestly overjoyed. I think that striker was definitely something that we needed. And I always kind of liked Jesus from, like other games for Man City throughout the years. But I was never fully convinced of him just because, he was always behind Aguero. But then I definitely saw through all the tactical breakdowns and other little stuff too. Like by the way he ended the season, that he definitely had the ability to be a great striker. And I think he'll be perfect with us and our Brazilian culture we're building now.
Yeah, we are. It's mad how many Brazilian players are starting to arrive at the club. Hopefully, Jesus isn't the last one of the window, because obviously we'd much rather see Rafinha added to that list as well. Ogie, give me your thoughts, mate, about where you're sitting on Gabriel Jesus.
Sitting in a very classy place. Love it. It's just, it's been a long time coming. And super excited. I was listening to Pep this morning. Basically built, Jesus being one of the top pressing monsters. And I'm like, well, that's the guy we signed. Super stoked. A couple of mates are taking a piss on a group saying, oh, well, that's not the only striker you need. And I'm like, he'll do, so I'm super excited.
Yeah, I'm sure you're not alone either whatsoever. Let's finally get David's initial thoughts. David, how are you feeling about this?
Yeah, it's a good signing at the end of the day. It kind of fits the same profile that we have with Lacazette. But again, it's just a more clinical player, a player that's younger, quick on the ball and stuff like that, better movement. So at the end of the day, it should help us, especially in that front area where we kind of need a bit more goals. So yeah, good so far.
Yeah, absolutely indeed. Let's focus in on Jesus specifically as a player, on kind of what he's going to bring to Arsenal next season. Jordan, of course, we've gone through a fair few strikers in the last decade or so, but most recently we had Aubameyang and Lacazette. What do you think the difference is that Jesus is going to bring that we weren't previously getting with Aubameyang and Lacazette last year?
Well, I definitely think that he brings definitely his ability to play right wing and center at an efficient rate, but also I think he also I've seen his hold-up play actually is very good and link-up play, and be able to do that. Our team definitely relies a lot on the wingers to be able to score the goals, make the assists, and that he makes the right runs, and also our team is really big in pressing. And as everyone says, he's a pressing monster, as they say. So that's definitely going to be key for us in how we want to play our offense and defense.
Yeah, that seems to be kind of a requisite, doesn't it, of what Arteta asks for from his players. They need to have energy and they need to be able to push and pressure the opposition team. I mean, Ogie, when I talk to people about kind of the style of player that Arsenal want to sign and specifically kind of the profile, we've always talked about Arsenal needing to go for players that would get into Manchester City's team, get into Liverpool's team. That's the only way that we're going to close the gap with these sides. Despite him leaving Man City, do you still think he fulfills that criteria?
Oh, 100%. 100%. The thing I find very more appealing about the signing of Gabriel Jesus, so the way I kind of conceptualize it is that he brings with Jesus, what you're seeing is this collective team-based identity. You know what I mean? As opposed to, say, signing a player like Osimhen, where you kind of have that individualized, like, I'm going to be the one to, get the goals myself. But with Jesus, you see him for that, team orientation in terms of him being a pressing monster, team orientation in terms of him being able to play multiple positions, team orientation in terms of him bringing other people into play, right? So we're seeing an uptake we're going to be seeing an uptake from Saka. I don't want to mention Rafinha yet, but Martinelli and ESR, just such a wonderful player, such a wonderful player.
Yeah, and also, David, it's his creativity, as well. It's not just goals that he adds. He adds creativity. He's got so many assists for Manchester City last season. Yes, he was playing in a very, dominant side that Manchester City are, but he's created opportunities for so many of his teammates and been asked to play in those wide positions. I don't know if you managed to catch that interview that Tim Vickery did with Sky Sports, where he kind of went viral on social media, talking about how the fact that the Brazilian coach had said that he'd told him that he's more of a winger than a striker. Does that worry you in any way, or do you think like he's going to appreciate coming to Arsenal as their number 9?
Not at all. Like, at the end of the day, I think people got to take that comment with a lot of context. Again, it was 4 years ago, right after a bad World Cup where he was supposed to be the main striker getting all the goals. And I think a lot of people like to take that out of context and think that that's how he feels currently. Again, that was a guy coming off a bad tournament, 21 years of age. He's 25 now. He's been on a good Man City team, has a lot more experience, has a lot more confidence in himself. And at the end of the day, that's what we want coming into Arsenal. You want that confident guy that wants to prove a point and wants to prove a lot of the doubters wrong. And at the end of the day, it's just going to be a better thing for us, like a guy that wants to take players on, that wants to drop in, that wants to do what the manager wants, because at the end of the day, we all know what a lot of these deals this summer are really going to be about. It's going to be about, the World Cup in a couple months. And if he can play well in these first 3 or 4 months, start to show that he's that main guy, I'm pretty sure like there's like maybe one more break in between then. If he can get in there, he's obviously going to make the World Cup, and he wants to be starting. He wants to prove people wrong yet again. And that's what we want.
Absolutely. Thank you for the donation from Fat Baby Ambiance, who says, big up fellas, which players do you see leaving Arsenal? Jordan, I'll throw this question to you. Which players do you think are at the club do you see not in an Arsenal shirt next season?
Well, the main one's always, you think of Leno, you think of
Oh, we've lost your microphone, Jordan, just for a second. I can't hear a word you're saying. I don't know why. Take it out and put it back in again. That might be the way to fix it. But you've got. And now I can hear myself, which is great. We'll get Jordan back in just a second, and hopefully it works for us. Jordan, let's try again. We're going to try and get Jordan back in a second, I think. Why don't you take over, Ogie, in regards to answering that question on the screen?
For me, definitely Leno. Obviously, with Martin coming in and Ramsdale in goal, I definitely don't see him being there next season. Definitely. Okay. And then we're looking at players like Maitland-Niles, Bellerin, Torreira, definitely. Pablo Mari. Reece Nelson. I'm not. You know what? I see him leaving as well, but I could kind of equally see him staying. And who else? Yeah,
I
I
suppose
think
you've got Pablo Marie, you've got Hector Bellerin, if we've mentioned Ainsley Maitland-Niles, another one that
Tavares.
could move on. Tavares, yeah, absolutely.
Tavares.
Let me ask you guys a question real quick.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Because we've heard a lot of this stuff about Yuri Tillmans. If we get him, potentially that means that we got to move somebody out in that midfield. Do you feel that this whole thing about Granit Xhaka potentially leaving? Do you think that that's actually real? And do you feel that that would actually be a positive thing for Arsenal? Because for me personally, I don't think that we should be moving on Granit Xhaka. I know in the Discord chat these guys joke around and say that we gotta move him out, that he needs to go and stuff like that. But I think
Some of them aren't joking.
this,
just
yeah,
to tell you
exactly.
that,
You
they
know what I'm
are.
saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm at a point now where it's just like, yes, I feel that we need to move on from him. He needs to be upgraded. That's why we need to bring in Yuri Tillemans. We should have brought in a midfielder like him last season.
Mm.
But ultimately, it's kind of the same thing with, the Rafinha, the Saka thing, with Lissandro Martinez and Gabriel. At the end of the day, we need numbers and we need experience, especially in that midfield. It doesn't make sense trying to bring one in and move one out because we're going to need numbers next season. The
Yeah.
main problem with us last season is that we didn't have enough numbers and people that came in weren't good enough to actually keep the level high. So what do you guys feel? Do you think that we should move Jack one this season or keep him for another season?
Let's test if Jordan's audio is back for the question. Are you there, mate?
Okay.
You good?
You guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Lovely
All
stuff. Why
right.
don't you tackle David's question?
Okay, so for me, I feel it's tough because I feel like we have last year he was vital because I feel that this team needed leaders, and regardless of all his faults, he is a leader for this team. But I feel like we're coming to that conclusion time where this team is starting to build its own leaders, and they're getting to that point now where I would like to have a one more season just because I think as the depth for Tielemans, but I don't think he'd like to be that. So I don't know how that's going to work on that part. But I think if we had actually gotten Tielemans, and that if he wanted to leave, I wouldn't be too upset. Just in this scenario, because I mean, there's other routes we can go. Are we going to get another midfielder to replace him, or are we going to try to move Akunga up to an 8 and get and get the season as the option for backup 6? But I feel this team has the possibility that if they needed to sell Xhaka because he doesn't want to be with us anymore, then I would do it.
Yeah, I think from the chat box, a fair few people are talking about moving Xhaka on as well. Dan Robert, who I know is a big advocate in our Discord server, I'll drive Xhaka to the airport. T-By Pest reckons that we can get around 25 to 30 million for Xhaka. Dave says, if we sign our targets, and it's a big if, we absolutely will go to the next level. And maybe that means moving Granit Xhaka onwards. Anton says, clubs outside England are too poor to pay £30 million for Xhaka. I do tend to agree with that. NVR says, if Xhaka is the reason that we don't get Yuri, I'll be throwing my PC out of the window, which, is an extreme way to react. I don't think it necessarily is, because I think what David was talking about there is important to consider. I think that when we consider the fact that we need to strengthen the squad, it's not about replacing individual players. It's about adding quality to the existing quality that's already in the side. Ogie, do you kind of think along the same lines, or do you think that we need to replace certain individuals?
Specifically, if it's really about Xhaka, I would still keep Xhaka. Because I think with Xhaka, there's a lot of psychological intangibles that are there with him, and I think the manager finds it very, very appealing. It's like things that the manager uses, and obviously also uses to kind of spur on the players. So in a sense, I kind of see Xhaka as an extension of Mikel on the pitch, and things like that you can't just get it on the whim. So I think Xhaka still has a role, just more of as a stabilizing and also as a rallying force for a young team. And then I think the way our story ends with Xhaka is him basically saying, you know what, my job is done, and it's time for me to move on. But till he does, I think he would still have a place at Arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, he said, didn't he, that he wanted to achieve something special before he left. I'm not sure what that is, or the context of that, or what special constitutes. I don't think he's finishing 5th in the Premier League, so by that, I don't think we're going to see him go anywhere. Just before we move on to the next question, thank you, Greg, for your donation. If you did mean to leave a comment alongside that, do leave your comment in the comment section, Greg, and I'll definitely read it out. I know sometimes people accidentally click the enter button before they've managed to type out their thing. But thank you so much for your really kind donation, Greg. And I appreciate the regular comments that you leave in the comment sections. I read through all of them. Apologies that I don't get the chance to reply to every one of them every single day. But thank you. A massive thank you to Greg there. In regards to the other signings, because I kind of wanted to split this show into 2 parts, which was the first half being the players that we've signed, hence why I'm talking about Jesus, because it's confirmed now, and the second half being the players that we still might sign. So Fabio Vieira, David, I mean, came out of nowhere. Really exciting when that kind of thing happens. We love that. Half kind of love as a journalist from my perspective, because obviously, you want to get the scoops, you want to get the information ahead of time, but still as a fan, when they come out of nowhere, it's great to know that the club are doing their absolute utmost to try and keep these things behind closed doors. And so that when, we're sitting on the 1st of June and I'm doing a show in the morning about our transfers and people are moaning in the chat that we've not done any business yet, we can be reassured that stuff does go on that we just don't hear about. But tell me about your feelings about Fabio Vieira and that signing.
My first thought when I actually saw it happen was I was kind of questioning whether they did it on purpose, because obviously the day before, East Basuma was announced that he was going to Tottenham, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we bring up this kid that no one really knows about. But then within like 5-10 minutes of the first tweet, all of a sudden it's done. We have our first signing, our first proper signing through the door, and I think a lot of people kind of, were surprised. I think it's probably the best thing for these guys to actually do it, to kind of roll it out like that no one really knew about it. But getting on to the actual player, look, at the end of the day, I don't think like most people before he was announced really knew about him. But obviously within the last 2 weeks, so since we've actually seen that he's come in and more information has been provided, we've kind of heard a bit more stuff about the experts that actually watch him week in and week out and stuff like that. I think it's actually a pretty good sign. I think it's primarily supposed to be about trying to bring in a bit more creativity and a bit more kind of quality, kind of in between the lines, just outside the box and stuff like that. Trying to pick out players, because that's again another thing that we need. And probably the other thing is that again it's more backup, it's more options to bring off the bench, because one of the things that we were worried about last season was a lot of our main players getting injured and stuff like that. And luckily, a guy like Juan Odegaard didn't get injured. He wasn't out. We were able to play him most of the time. So I think just they're trying to do with Rafinha and with Sandro Martinez. I think they are trying to bring this guy in to try and bring a bit more options, a bit more creativity to the team. And again, that's only going to be a positive thing for us. Really, him and probably Lisandro Martinez for me is probably the most interesting players that I'm looking forward to see.
Yeah, I mean, Sandro Martinez, if we get that deal done, is such a smart piece of business by Arsenal, and I'll be looking forward to seeing what happens there. Jordan, obviously, the other interesting signing that really came out of nowhere that we weren't really expecting was the youngster Marquinhos. I'm not expecting you to be an expert in, Brazilian football out of nowhere, but that type of signing we've seen before in the form of Gabriel Martinelli. Edu was obviously been a big part of this one. He wasn't a massive part of the Martinelli deal, but do you think there's an element of we need to continue to kind of, keep the conveyor belt running, if you like, of these young, talented signings that we can make for small amounts of money?
Yeah, no. A lot of people, they were upset that Edu actually paid for him. But to me, honestly, I think it's paying forward for him, because I think Marquinhos, he's not. I say that, but you never know. But I think in this current scenario that this season he'll go out on loan, and that next season we'll really see what's happening. Because I think next season, I don't know. It's just kind of my hot take, but I think either one of Smith Rowe or Sorry, my dog keeps coming in now. But
that's all right. Fine.
Smith Rowe.
There's worse things that could walk through the door. Let's be honest.
That's true. But there's a random door. Like, what the heck is going on? No, but I think either Martinelli or Smith Rowe might leave next season. This is my hot take, but I think competition for places and wanting to play, that someone's going to want to pay for them. And I think that pieces like Martinez, that you get small and you allow them to put themselves up, get that confidence, they can be the replacement to come in next season. But you never know. But like I said, having that good consistent run of young people coming in, take the spots is never bad.
Absolutely. Ogie, in regards to the other player, he's not the most exciting. It's not the most fashionable signing in the world, bringing in a goalkeeper, but Matt Turner was secured pretty much in January. That deal we've known about for a long, long time. He will come in to replace Bernd Leno. We're expecting him to move on. Obviously, those based in the US will know a lot more than me about the goalkeeper, but it's good to know kind of that deal was done well ahead of time, and that it was another example of the preparation of this summer.
Yeah, absolutely. Like with Mikel and Edu, when I think about this Matt Turner, and when I think of Marquinhos, I kind of think of, and even to be honest, Pablo Vieira, I kind of think of it more as trusted Mikel and Edu type signings. You know what I mean? Because for me, not players I really knew a lot about, but then in seeing kind of how they've been, going about their business in trying to ensure that obviously key details or key gaps in the teams are filled, I'm like, okay. But the funny thing with Turner, though, is I've kind of heard a little bit of like probably contradictory reports. On one hand, he's this phenomenal shot stopper, but on the other hand, he's this player who's not really too good with his feet, right? In terms of like progressing the ball, and so it's kind of one of those. I'm like looking at Mikel and Edu. I'm like, hey, that's your boy. We'll see.
But do you feel like, because Arteta, one of the big demands that Arteta has had from goalkeepers is that they are able to play out with their feet. I also, when this was kind of first talked about back in January, heard those same rumours. And yet, despite that, and having done a little bit more research into it and spoken to a few more experts, is actually one of the parts of his game that has improved significantly across the last 12 months is his delivery out from the back, both with his hands and with his feet. Does it encourage you that, knowing what the type of goalkeeper Arteta likes, they probably wouldn't be after a goalkeeper that didn't have that ability?
Actually, that's a good point. That's a good point. And I just, yes, I would definitely say that, because there just seems to be and I was musing this prior to coming on, and this is a question for you three gentlemen. During most of Wenger's time in Arsenal, do you feel as a fan you were ever this involved / in the know about transfer deal? No, I'm not in the know in terms of like.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, we have this
tracking it every day. Yeah,
and also just more in terms of like feeling specific positional needs. Like, for instance, we need to get a backup for Saka, or we need a striker. Like, it almost seems like the average Arsenal fan now are more in the know about what the potential squad gaps that needs to be filled will be than in Wenger's. Because if you think about it, for instance, Ozil, right? When Ozil came in, we had no clue the attack and midfield area was the one that needed to be filled. So I was just kind of amused at that.
David, why don't you tackle it?
It's funny thing, because I'm pretty sure that over the past 2 years, if anything, Mikel Arteta and Edu, and I think the club, have actually minimized the amount of information that actually gets put out. You don't really hear a lot about what's actually happening on the training ground, what's happening in the club. That's why we're able to have, the the Fabio Vieira deal. We're able to have this information out of nowhere. But going on from what Ogie's saying, I think it's probably a result of us having just a bit more information at our hands, especially with like social media and stuff like that. There's always constant information going out and out and out. And when we're actually looking at, the squad and players and stuff like that, this is probably the only thing right now, like pretty much like for me at least, this is the reason why I continue to defend Arteta and I keep on, trying to go with him, because at the end of the day, for the first time in maybe 5 or 10 years since Wenger, it feels like this is the first time that Arsenal have actually moved with a plan.
Yeah.
That everybody can actually, look at and actually acknowledge.
Yeah.
And again, like even to go to stuff like the players we're trying to bring in, it's always the same profile of play. We're not actually looking at positions anymore. We're actually looking at profiles of player that actually fit into the system that Mikel Arteta is trying to bring in. And that's what people need to understand. We're trying to look at young players with high potential, the versatile, the technical on the ball, and also have, good work ethic and good attitude. And that's what Mikel Arteta wants to bring. This is what Mikel Arteta wants to do. This is what he wants to, and I understand where a lot of other fans may want to have their own kind of, choices when it comes to players. People may want to look at Abasuma instead of Tillemans, maybe, other players here and there. But at the end of the day, this is the first time that I can, as an Arsenal fan, trust what these guys are doing and trust the information that's coming out of the club, because ultimately it seems like these guys do actually know what they're doing. And I think people just got to get on board and just kind of follow it for a little bit, just see, because we are improving, we are getting better, and at least we are looking like we are moving a bit smarter.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, smart is the word for me, It's the first time I see, like, also we've learned from mistakes in the market. When Arteta first came in and we bought Willian, Runarsson, I know we did a couple of decent deals, we bought very decent deals in Gabriel and Partey that summer, but, Willian was moved on a year after he arrived. It was on both parties. We recognized that it wasn't working. We moved on, and we're very fortunate to Willian. He was happy to kind of, rip up his contract at that point. But we recognized that wasn't the way forwards for us, and then it wasn't working out. And also that he's the first manager, or say the first manager, because we haven't had that many, but it's been the first time in a long time that we recognized we needed improvement at centre-back. So we've gone and spent, so far, 75, 80 million pounds at centre-back on Gabriel and White. That'll probably tip over the £100 million mark when we hopefully bring in Lisandro Martinez. We know we needed a world-class central midfielder when we brought in Thomas Partey, and hopefully we can add to that this summer as well. It's that level of responsibility, I think, that's added to the team that we've seen under Arteta and Edu. The final question before we bring in our next three guests of today's episode is to answer a very simple yes or no question. And that's the question that's on today's thumbnail of the show, which is this going to be the best Arsenal transfer window in the club's history? Jordan, we'll start with you. Is it going to be the best window we've ever seen?
Okay. This is intense. Okay. I can't think of anything. If we got all the names that we're linked with right now, then in my lifetime, probably yes. I don't know anything else.
Yeah. Okay. What do you think?
It's looking like it's going to be. If we like Jordan said, if we get everyone that we've been linked with, like if we get Lisandro in, if we get, bar none.
And David,
just like everybody else, yes. We're bringing in quality. We're bringing in players that will get into these other teams that we want to be improving against. So obviously,
if we got Tielemans, if we got Jesus, we got Jesus. So we got Tielemans and we got Lisandro and Rafinha. Then I'd have to say it, yeah.
What if it was just Lisandro and Rafinha?
Just them, then I'd be very happy, but I'd still be slightly concerned about the midfield. But we just have to just figure it out.
There you go. Out of 10, I'd probably, if we ended up doing that, I mean, if Tielemans is added as well, if it was just, say, Rafinha and Lisandro Martinez on top of this, I'd probably give it a 9.5. If we brought in the central midfielder, I think that would probably tip it over to the 10 out of 10 situation. I mean, anyone disagree with that? I think that's probably about how we'd feel. Yeah.
Yeah, and add in Saliba coming back.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully on a new contract.
He's like a new signing, the famous saying.
And Saliba contract potential. If we got that, I'd be like, Edu.
Yeah, it's a 10.
Yeah, absolutely. He's entitled to do as many barbecues as he likes if he pulls that off.
I think my mantra going into this season is if someone tells you they are who they are, believe them. And that's basically speaking to Mikel Arteta. He's told us who he is. We just have to believe him.
Good way to end our first section, Ogie. Thank you so much, guys, for coming on. Jordan, thank you so much for coming on. Tell people where they can find you.
It's Jordan Henley on Twitter, and that's pretty much it. And Discord.
Lovely stuff. Thank you for coming on, mates. Ogie, fantastic debut, my friend.
Yes, sir.
And thanks for coming on. Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, Ogie213 on Twitter. That's it.
Lovely stuff. And finally, David, thank you so much as well for making up our panel today. Tell people where they can find you.
Appreciate it, guys. _ Dave Taco. Yeah, on Instagram.
Lovely stuff. Easy peasy. Love to see it. A massive thank you to our first 3 guests of our 2-part show today. Boys, absolute pleasure as always, and I'll catch you again very soon.
Thank you.
Sure.
Have a good one, guys. A massive thank you to Ogie and David and Jordan for coming on the first part of today's show. This is not the end of today's show. This is happening in 2 parts, and we're going to introduce to you our next 3 guests very shortly. Before we do, just a dip into the chat box. We had a super chat come in from the real Yanis, who says, if we sign all the players we need, it probably will be our best window, a solid one. The question would be, would it be a fantastic window, or is it the best of a bad bunch of windows? We've had our fair share of bad ones. That's fair to say. But I think if we, as we just talked about, if we get all those players in, it would be pretty incredible as windows go. Fat Baby Ambion says, I just laugh because it's one of the most hilarious YouTube names I've seen. Says, do you think Arsenal will miss not having a target man up front? It's a good and fair question, because a lot of us have always talked about having kind of that tall striker. Will they add anything to Arsenal, and not having that player, is that going to be a problem when we're trying to put crosses into the box? Perhaps it's something that we see towards the end of the window. Arsenal maybe looking to bring someone in on loan in that kind of target man type. Let's move on to the second part of today's show and bring in our next 3 guests. First of all, it's Dan. How you doing, Dan? You good? You well?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. Good to see the news on Jesus today, so I'm excited.
Absolutely. We're going to get some more reaction to that in just a second. We're also joined by Sasha. How you doing, Sasha? You good?
Yeah, I'm great. It's been a while since I've been on, so it's good to be back.
Are you so familiar coming on now that you don't need to put your number of appearances in your name?
Yeah, it's for the Discord only. If you want to see how many appearances I have, you have to join the Discord.
I love that. It's like a Discord exclusive. And finally, joining us today and making up our panel of 4, it's Jeremy. How you doing, Jeremy? You good?
Doing all right. Spence to Tottenham might fall through. It's just a good day all around.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm loving that. Just digging out Spurs straight away. Love it. That's fantastic. Let's kick off today's show as we kicked off the first part by getting it, because it'd be unfair if I didn't, and got your boys' reactions to Gabriel Jesus and that deal being confirmed. Dan, tell me how you're feeling about this one.
It's really excited me. I've seen City play, obviously, quite a lot over the last few years, and he just impresses me. And I feel, obviously, at City, he's around a lot of world-class players. At Arsenal, it'd be slightly different. Whilst I think we've got brilliant players and they've all got kind of a potential to be world class, they're not there yet. And I think Jesus will definitely add to the quality that we've got up front. So I'm very hopeful, and I think he can have a very good season. And he's not too dissimilar to Lacazette in the way he kind of helps with the hold-up play and helps with the play around. So I'm quite excited to see what he's got.
Absolutely, yeah. It's how he transitions. I think that's the big question, of course, moving from that City team to Arsenal. Sasha, do you have any concerns at all about the deal, like I've just mentioned there, about how he might transition, about how he might acclimatise to specifically playing at striker rather than out on the wide positions?
Absolutely not. I'm very happy with the deal. Jesus have 54 goals in 99 starts, and Eddie Nketiah has 23 goals in 39 starts. And I think between them, we will easily manage 20 goals out of them, depending on the time. And I bet you at some point this season, we will see Nketiah at the front and Jesus on the right wing or on the left wing, and them even combining and giving us a nice phoning celebration where the one goes to the other one and do the phone thing. But
if they don't do that
depending,
for the announcement, I'm going to be so annoyed. So annoyed. That has to be involved in some way, surely.
yeah, Eddie has to be involved in the Jesus one. I'm quite surprised they didn't double announce it, because the hype would have been mad for that one. Because some of us are actually really happy about the Nketiah one as well, like myself. So having them both now as the striker options just feels good to me. And depending on how, if they can stay fit, I think we will be getting loads of goals from them.
Lovely stuff. And lastly, Jeremy, Gabriel Jesus is an Arsenal player. How are you feeling about that?
I'm feeling great. I wouldn't worry too much about him transitioning because, I mean, in the starting lineup, I mean, we're very similar to City, like profile-wise, obviously not quality-wise. Because, going from Mahrez and Sterling to Saka and Martinelli is like very similar in play style. And also, I feel like the thing most people aren't talking about is just how he can help us exert our dominance on the game and in the press, because he doesn't stop. He just keeps on going. Like Lacazette, was he 30, 31? Like he was after 60, 65 minutes, he would get gas, and it wouldn't be the exact same. But with Jesus up there initiating the press, I feel like we can definitely dominate those games against mid and lower table opposition a lot easier.
Yeah, it's a really good point. His energy is something that Pep Guardiola talks about a lot when describing him. If you want to know more about our reaction to Jesus, of course, do rewind to the start of the show where we had three of our other guests with Ogie, Jordan and David on. But what we didn't talk about with the previous three is obviously the potential signings that we might see. We discussed the likes of Marquinhos and Turner and Fabio Vieira. But now in this second half, we're going to do some more fun stuff, which is to talk about what might still happen between now and the end of the window. Dan, the big one, as we all know, is, well, it's Rafinha. There's no beating around the bush. It's a very exciting potential player. The latest is, of course, that Arsenal are continuing to push for this. I saw a couple of people in the chat was trying to not spreads themselves, but kind of question about some little rumors about deals breaking down. But that's not been spread across any official or legitimate lines I've seen. So, just chill. Don't worry about that just yet. The latest on this is obviously that Arsenal intend to go in with another bid after having their first bid turned down. Rafinha is currently in Spain with his agent Deco, which, as we know, in Ibiza, which is nearer to Barcelona than it is Arsenal. But Barcelona's financial issues make that a very difficult deal for them to do, unless, of course, that deal with De Jong pushes through. That might enable them to make a better kind of play for Rafinha if they want to. Even that said, Ousmane Dembele's future means that they may still not go for Rafinha because Dembele might prevent that deal from happening. But Dan, how are you feeling about the potential of seeing Rafinha at Arsenal? And how concerned are you about the questioning about how he may fit in, considering Bukayo Saka's presence in the squad?
It's something I've actually spoken to a lot throughout the last few days to some of my friends. I've got a bit of a soft spot for Leeds because I went to university there. I know you're the same with Nottingham. And the season before last, whenever I'd watch Leeds, it just excited me because of Rafinha. And every time I watched Leeds play, he was just unreal. And there wasn't another team, obviously, apart from Arsenal, that I would watch and be excited to see. And he really just tore up the Premier League for what I believe. And I'd be absolutely buzzing if we got Rafinha. The difficult one is, why are we spending so much on a position where arguably our best player is? And I guess there's a few things around it. Either we're building to not necessarily a top 4 team, but almost a title winning team. And I'm not saying we're going to win the title next season, but you see what Man City do. They've got world-class players everywhere. Maybe we're adding Rafinha on to just add goals to the team, not necessarily add to the right wing position, but just to bring more goals into the side. And I think we're adding world-class players around potential world-class players, and it's only going to be a good thing for us. So I think also with the 5 sub rule, I think they're both going to see a lot of minutes anyway. We've got multiple games throughout the season I don't think it's an issue, really. You might also see them play in different positions. And I saw someone in the comments said that Smith Rowe might not get as many games, and I kind of agree, which is a shame because I think last season, I almost think Smith Rowe was our best player when he was playing on that left side. And I don't really want to see him not play, but I don't really know how he starts all the games if we get Rafinha in. But it's something I'm not too bothered about because if we're bringing in a very good player, world-class player, then and that increases Arsenal's chance of winning trophies again, then I'm all for it.
Absolutely. We've wanted Arsenal to strengthen and be ruthless in the market, and a deal for Rafinha, would certainly be, Sasha, a signal of that intent to try and not only push forwards, but again, taking big Premier League starting quality, which is something that we just didn't do really prior to Arteta's arrival at Arsenal. The last big Premier League sign that we made, I'm going all the way back to Sol Campbell. That's how far back we're kind of having to go at this stage. I know we brought in some other starters like Matteo Debuchy from Newcastle, if you remember, but I'm really struggling, to think off the top of my head of a Premier League starting player before, this Arteta era where we started to bring in, your Ramsdales, your Whites, and now Jesus. Can you think off the top of your head of any examples? Because I'm really struggling to think of. And then, of course, your thoughts on this new kind of method of buying.
Well, Ben White,
Yeah,
Premier
of
League
course.
proven,
Yeah.
and Ramsdale. But yeah, that's what I can think of right now. But what I want to say is I think Arsenal's really smart in the transfer window. We all thought we were going maybe just for striker and centre mid, maybe spend the most money on just those two positions and one other, three signings as what have been reported. But we're actually really smart because if you look at it from the whole picture, what happens if White gets an injury? What happens if Gabriel gets an injury? What happens if Tierney gets an injury? What happens if Partey gets an injury? Saka, Nketiah is now the striker, and Xhaka. What happens if those players get an injury? Because then it's going to be a massive dent in the club as well. So we have identified players to come in that position, but not as backups to challenge them. And actually, it's the best of the two now starts because you have William Saliba coming back to challenge Ben White. You have potentially Lisandro Martinez, who covers three positions. He covers the centre back for Gabriel, he covers left back for Tierney, and he covers defensive midfield for Partey. And also the re-signing of Al Neni covers that as well. And then Rafinha possibly covers for Saka. But it's also a case of, I think, more of its six players competing for three positions, the six forwards competing for the three positions, because I can see something like it might be Jesus starting in the center and Saka on the right, for example. But somewhere in the game, you might see Jesus on the left and Saka in the middle, because Arteta's system is so fluid, and I can see the interchange happening like that as well. So essentially, Arsenal have identified key areas, key profiles, and we are chasing those targets, and we are competing the squad because essentially, for example, bringing Rafinha can only improve Saka. It won't. I don't think it will hinder him as well. Then just to quickly add on it, I have here we save 31.2 million in wages, only in wages, if we sell Bellerin, Pepe, Leno, Murray, Torreira, Renarsson, and Ainsley Maitland-Niles, which all look to be out. So if we let them go all for free, that's another 31 recoup. But we're obviously not going to let them all go for free. So we will have money in. Even if we don't get Rafinha, don't get Lisandro, we've already identified the profiles. That's the positive thing. So now if we don't get Rafinha, we just need to go and get the next best similar to Rafinha or Lisandro in this case. So I don't think it's the end of the world if we don't get Rafinha or Lisandro or so. But my main concern is the thing that we're not in for Tielemans anymore, because I think if we get Rafinha, Lisandro, the main one that's still left for me is the Xhaka position, the left side of 8, the more defensive side of 8, the controlling side of 8. Because if you only have Xhaka and Lokonga there, I think we might run into a problem. But hopefully we can get Tielemans or Zinchenko or Sergei Milinkovic-Savic if we're going crazy.
It would be
someone
crazy.
Maybe I'm even open for Arthur from Juventus on loan.
Dan's
Adding to
shaking his
the
head.
yeah, I saw that one. Adding to the Brazilian connection we already have. Um, and if he comes on loan and we keep Xhaka, that won't be the end of the world. Especially if we do get the other targets then. But yeah, that's summing up what I have to say.
Absolutely. No, you summed it up well. Jeremy, Rafinha is obviously a player that scored, I think off the top of my head, 10 goals last season, and ended up with just the 3 assists, but had an XG, if for those that watched our tactical breakdown, of over 8, I think it was, an XA, sorry, of over 8, an expected assist of over 8, which means obviously he is very creative and he wasn't being utilized by Leeds, or rather Leeds weren't benefiting from what creativity he brought to the team. I mentioned Saka a second ago, but I'm interested to your thoughts on it. Do you think that Rafinha's arrival probably means that Saka moves to that left-hand side, or do you see it more of a rotational situation, more so than them forced to play together?
I see it more as a rotational situation. Again, pointing at City, almost no player besides Ederson and maybe De Bruyne start game in, game out. The front three, you'd flip a coin. It can be Sterling, Jesus, Mahrez. It can be Foden, Grealish. It doesn't matter. Again, this is the World Cup's in November to December, and they have to get the whole group stage of the Europa League and half or 16, something like that. A lot of Premier League games done before that as well. And if Saka got hurt, then we would, and we do offload Pepe, then we'd be in trouble. So we need to not only get competition for Saka, but someone that's not a big drop down in quality. Because we all saw, like, Partey to El Neni, we all saw that. It wasn't pretty. Well, El Neni's a great squad player, but Partey's a different animal.
Absolutely. I think Partey is just that level above, isn't he? Like, you think about when we lost him at the end of last season, Jeremy, we really struggled to replace him. Yeah.
And with Saka right now, when we put on Pepe against the Leeds, and he had that moment where, the goal was empty and he just tried to cut it back, and you're just like, all right, I know, like, Saka at least shoots it. It's a lot of small things, but I feel like Sasha said, I'm not worried about Tielemans. I feel like no one else is really in for him, and they're still asking for too much. So we might come back later in the window and try and get him at a discounted price when they're just desperate to offload him and get something for him. But I do agree that if we don't get that left-sided 8, Xhaka, that's not Xhaka's role. That's not where he thrives. And he's not a 6 either. Like, the direction the team is going, what Arteta's vision is, Xhaka doesn't really fit anywhere because he's best in a 2. He's best next to someone, not by himself as a 6 or by himself as an 8. So I think we should try to move on from him this year and get a Tielemans, or if there was a God, Lucas Paqueta, but we'll see.
Yeah, if there was a God, I love that. Lucas Paqueta is quite the talent, that's for sure. I do want to address this because I can see it keeps popping up in the chat box. There's a report that's come out by Dario Sports that says, it's translated that it says Arsenal pull out of Rafinha race and sign City's Gabriel Jesus for over 52 million euros. The lead star continues to block all English offers because his wish is to play for Barca. For those that have seen this and are watching this and going, oh no, what's going on? Don't panic just yet, because first of all, sport as an outlet are effectively a mouthpiece for Barcelona. They are, that's where they're based. That's where their information comes from. And Barca are interested in signing Rafinha. They are just struggling right now with the situation financially. So, and also Arsenal have had a bid rejected. Arsenal don't go for players and don't bid for players unless they've got a fair amount of good go-aheads from the players' camp that they would be open. So the report to suggest that Arsenal or all English offers are being blocked by Rafinha just would be patently untrue, because Arsenal just don't operate that way. That's why, you never saw a bid, as I use the example, for Vlahovic, in January. We never bid for Fiorentina. We never sent an official offer in because we never, agreed, or Vlahovic never made it clear to Arsenal that he would be open to coming. We never managed to break that or get that agreement. So Arsenal never bid for the player. With this Rafinha news, just take it with the biggest grain of salt if you can. But I'm sure you'll start seeing it spread across your timeline, because that's, of course, where it's come from. But there are a lot more reliable sources out there that you should be listening to first. I'm not saying that we want that. This is obviously that Rafinha may not come to Arsenal. Of course, that'd be silly. Anything can happen at this stage. But just before you lose your minds, just be aware and aware of the situation. Let's move forward to some other potential transfers. The other big name, of course, Dan, is Lisandro Martinez, Argentinian international, the Butcher, as he's known. And Mike from the Gooners Pod, as we know, is a huge fan. And by the way, if you didn't go and check out Mike from the Gooners Pod's breakdown of where Arsenal's money's coming from, definitely make sure you go and check that one out. But what are your thoughts on this guy? I mean, Sasha did a great breakdown on him a second ago about where he can cover. But what are your thoughts on the player?
Well, Mike's already promised to put the Butcher on the back of his Arsenal kit, so that says it all, really. But I don't know much about the guy. I remember playing him on FIFA, and he had a good card. But from what I see, he's a centre back at trait and can fill in defensive midfield and at left back. And when looking at the team, at our side and where we need the depth, it probably is a backup to Gabriel. And then he can obviously fill in if Tierney gets injured. But I think we should be signing a Hickey as well as a Lisandro Martinez. Basically another left back as well as Martinez, personally. And I'm not the biggest fan of Xhaka. If Martinez can fill in or can play a good role at that position instead of Xhaka, I'm all for it. I saw your tactical breakdown, and he does look a quality player. No one's seen this breakdown. I'd give it a watch. So it's another player I'd get behind, and it will only get Gabriel to be the better player as well.
Sasha, I know that you broke him down positionally. You talked about kind of the midfield position of covering Thomas Partey. Do you think if we were to get Martinez in, it probably might prevent us from thinking of going for a midfielder? Do you think that they would be kind of happy with Martinez as potentially a midfield addition as well?
Oh yeah, he's gonna potentially take up a floater position, where he comes in a position where he's needed, much like Zinchenko almost at Manchester City. Because Thomas Partey, Gabriel, and Tierney is not going to play 60 games next season, which we potentially might do. So someone has to play in that position if they're unavailable. So Lisandro Martinez, I think, definitely will play at left centre back for us at least a few games, at least probably 10, and then he will probably play at left back and at central defensive midfield. And I think that is a big reason why we are in for him, because of his versatility. And then on the Rafinha news, I guess it could be true, because it could be a case of where Rafinha said, okay, let's wait for Barcelona, but you can come in for me. And that's what maybe Arsenal did. And now Barcelona gets the funds, they can go for Rafinha. Or it could be a case of Barcelona putting pressure on Ousmane Dembele to sign the new contract for them, so they create a fake story of Rafinha still coming onto them. Or it could be a case of Ousmane Dembele is failing to agree terms, and yet now they are going for Rafinha. But from what I remember, or from what I understand correctly, is that Barcelona also wants Lewandowski, Jules Koundé, and Bernardo Silva, and I don't think they're going to get all of them. Rafinha might be the number one target, but I'm struggling to understand, looking at the Barcelona squad right now, why right wing would be the priority for them, unless maybe Ousmane Dembele really isn't signing. So
yeah,
I would take it. I would take it with a pinch of salt. I wouldn't believe it. Of course, it's possible that we could, in 2 hours' time or tomorrow, hear Fabrizio or David Ornstein say, yeah, we have pulled out of the race for Rafinha. But until that, at least, I wouldn't get carried away with it.
Yeah, I agree. You need to temper the expectations a bit, and it's clear that Arsenal are trying to push for a player, Rafinha, because that's an area that they want to strengthen. So worst case scenario, we don't get him. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden Arsenal's efforts to sign a player in that ilk stop. That's why Arsenal are trying to do as much as they can early on, so that if the targets don't materialise because they missed out on Champions League, they can go for other targets.
Exactly, and contrary to some Arsenal's fans' beliefs, I don't think Edu and the people involved in the transfers are stupid people. So I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
they know, okay, we're going in for Rafinha. He's the main guy. He's the realistic option for the position we most want, for the player we most want for that position, which is realistic because obviously they would like Messi for that position. That's what I mean with realistic. And then if he doesn't happen, then we go on to B. And if B doesn't happen, we go on to C. They have already identified the profile. If Rafinha doesn't come in, I'm sure next on the line is Bowen, as we've heard some rumors of. If Bowen goes out, then maybe Gakpo. We don't know.
Yeah, there will be a list. There will be a list of targets that they would have significantly scouted, and they will know if they don't get one, another one will be targeted and looked at. Or maybe they go harder for a central midfielder. You know, maybe they then invest more money in that area. And plans change with, you know, Marquinhos. Maybe instead of going out alone, they integrate him into the squad and go big for a central midfielder. You know, things can change very quickly in the window, as we know all too well. Jeremy, kind of bringing the conversation back round to Lisandro Martinez as a potential option for Arsenal this summer. How excited does he make you as a potential player? And, you know, originally we put in a bid of £25 million. And, you know, we're now talking in figures of upwards of £40 million. Is that too high to look to bring in a player that, of course, we've already got Gabriel Magalhaes and players that can play where he plays primarily? Is that an issue for you?
Not at all. Gabriel can't play left back. I'm a pessimist when it comes to these things. So to me, a Kieran Tierney injury is inevitable. It's just at this point, you just have to expect it with the way he plays and all that. But he tactically and stylistically, he just fits us like a glove. Right, with the three, when we build up with the 3-2, when it's Tomiyasu dropping next to White and Gabriel, he can pass the ball arguably better and has better range and better turning radius than Gabriel. When you go to left back, same thing. When he can push off the field, like, he's not gonna, if he plays left back, I don't expect him to overlap. Really, he doesn't really bomb forward like that. But still, and also Partey gets injured, and I do want Arteta to put more faith in Lokonga, because the only way he's going to improve is by playing, especially in high-stake situations. But, you know, if he doesn't think he's ready, then he can also do a job there, you know, being press-resistant and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact that he's kind of so mobile is something that will definitely, you know, be attractive for Mikel Arteta and what he wants from a kind of defender that can get about the pitch, that can play in multiple positions, that can keep the ball, that can play the ball. That's all of the things that he looks for in a defender, and Martinez has that. So we're going to end the show with, of course, the question that I asked the other three boys, which is the same as the thumbnail of today's show, which is this going to be Arsenal's best ever transfer window? Kind of, Dan, tell me how you're feeling about that as a potential reality.
In the short answer, I'd say yes. In my lifetime, anyway, I'm sure when we signed other players, maybe. But the thing I have is, do we actually know that Tielemans is our top target for that role? And
he was, yeah, he was.
But this is what I don't understand, is how do we actually know that? Because Fabio Vieira came out of absolutely nowhere, and the same could be said for our centre mid number 8 position. For all we know, it could be someone that no one's mentioned before. Edu and Arteta wouldn't have mentioned it to anyone because they like to keep it behind closed doors. And tomorrow we see that in some Spanish outlet, we've bid 50 million for someone, and all of a sudden, this is what I'm saying. I still believe that we're going to sign someone that we don't know is linked to us as of yet, and that's kind of what excites me. I want to see another Fabio Vieira.
Well, I mean, the expectation is you will, because Arsenal are, as you say, trying to keep more of this news under wraps.
Exactly. So that's what excites me. But then again, if we get the players that we are linked to, like Rafinha, under the line, and we get Lisandro Martinez, and we get, whether it's Tielemans or someone else in that position, maybe another left back, especially with William Saliba coming back, I just look at the depth we'll have. Obviously, players will leave, but I look at the quality of depth we'll have, and I'll be confident that if we lost Gabriel through injury, we'd have good enough replacement. If we lost Saka, we'd have good enough replacement. There are a few positions where I'm still a bit iffy. I think Partey, if he got injured, which he probably most certainly will be, I don't know if I trust Lokonga over a whole season. I think I love Lokonga. I think he's got it in him, but he needs consistent game time, but not at the level I think we want to be. So that's a tough one. And obviously Tierney probably will be injured, as Jeremy said. And can Lisandro Martinez, who is a centre-back, can he fill there for the whole, for let's say 15, 16 games in a row? So it's all relative. We'll see come the end of the window whether it's been the best window.
Sasha?
Well, I've actually liked the way Arsenal have handled this window. Not on purpose, but how it planned out. So in the first few moments, we were indecisive, and Arteta's frustrated and angry, and the certain parts of the fan base is in meltdown. Rival fans is laughing, and then all of a sudden, boom! We hit them with everything at the same time. We announce Vieira. We announce pretty much Jesus. We talk about Rafinha, Alessandro Martinez, all these people, and I really like that. But to answer your question, I think it will depend on other clubs as well, because, like we've said, Barcelona with Rafinha, Manchester United can still come in for Lisandro Martinez, and that might cause a problem because they might offer him a higher wage. And those type of things. But if we do get our first choice targets, which is reportedly, allegedly, the targets going around right now, then of course it will definitely be the best window. It will be interesting to see or to hear what certain Arsenal fans come up with to create negativity if all this do happen. So yeah,
I reckon it will be something to do with the amount of money that's spent. That's probably the easy go-to.
I'm sure Ojo will soon let us know.
Can't be calling out fellow members when they're not here, Dan. That's not fair.
Yes, I
can. But yeah, I'm actually I'm very excited now. I'm constantly checking news, and I actually have opium. So yeah, we'll see.
Keep smelling the opium, absolutely. And lastly, Jeremy, will this be Arsenal's best ever transfer window?
Well, obviously we have to see them play first, but on paper,
get off the fence. Come on, just jump.
All right, you know what? Yeah, sure. Yeah. The best one I can remember since I started watching was 2012. We got Cazorla, Giroud, and Podolski. Podolski. The first 2 years was something else, but it was injuries. And I don't even need to tell you how good Santi Cazorla was. And same with Giroud.
Over 100 goals. And I think we regret letting him go in the end.
He did have that one goal drought that we always talk about, but he did score over 100 goals. He was brilliant. But you get Rafinha, is just electrifying, can compete on against Saka and Martinelli and ESR on either side. You get Tielemans, who's an immense upgrade on Xhaka, with the ball. You get Lisandro Martinez, so we don't have to play Rob Holding ever again. I hope. So, whatever. Different story, different time. and Jesus from Lacazette, another just huge improvement. Pressing, goals, link up play, all that. It's hard to say the last time we had a window this exciting.
I love it when there's an exciting transfer window. There is a part of me that's very worried that if we get all of our transfer business done, I'm going to have like 2 months of 8 a.m. shows where I'm wondering what we're going to talk about for 2 months. But outgoings, I suppose.
Do you think all these transfers, if we do get them in, is going to put a lot of pressure on us to actually finish in not just Champions League, but to finish better? It's crazy. I've seen obviously our first 8 games. I think are very winnable. If we win all of them, which could well happen, all of a sudden all the fans are going to be annoyed when we don't win the league.
Yeah, well, we went into last season thinking we were going to beat Brentford away from home, and look what happened, and things very quickly unravelled. So I'm not going to get ahead of myself with that. We'll take every game as it comes. I've never, The worst thing I ever did, I think, was doing that show where we predicted the run and it just never worked out anywhere close to what we thought. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. Thank you, everybody that's tuned into today's show. And a massive thank you again, of course, to our first 3 guests, Jordan, David, and Ogie. But again, a massive thank you to our latest 3 guests. Chat box, if you could show them some love, I would really appreciate that. Dan, thank you so much for your time, mate. Tell people they can find you.
Cheers. They can find me on Twitter using the handle below, and also in the Discord. You can also find me at the Emirates Cup next month, which I'm very excited about.
Nice. There'll be people searching through the Emirates for you now, Dan. That's what's going to happen. But yes, for those listening on audio only, you can find Dan at @DRobert_14 on Twitter. Sasha, thank you so much. Have you opened yourself up now to the world of Twitter? Is that what you've done to yourself? Why?
Yeah,
is the question.
I've been skeptical about Twitter because of the toxicity, if that's a word.
Yes, it is.
But
it's actually in the definition for Twitter. I think that's what it is.
Yeah. So I've actually started engaging in Twitter as well now, like tweeting myself and those type of things. And I've
tweeting yourself. You need some practice with Twitter because that's not how it works. You know, if you tweet yourself, you can't have a conversation, Sasha. What are you going to do?
Yeah. funny. Right. So what I'm trying to say is I've actually had a positive encounter with it, should I say it like that. So yeah, if you want to follow me, I'm SVW Sports. I'll probably follow you back as well. Tom, a follow from you would be nice as well. I like discussing sports, statistics, finance, of sports, of course, not just in general, of sports, statistics and finance in sport, and then just opinions, and it's mostly Arsenal related.
Lovely stuff. Just dropped you a follow, Sasha. You don't ask, you don't get, as they say. So lovely stuff. Jeremy, thank you so much for your time, as always. I know you're not as self-centered as Sasha and Dan to put your Twitter handle on your profile page there, but if you do want to shout out where people can find you, tell people where they can.
Yeah. My Twitter's JSmitty0110. That's mostly just football-related stuff. Yeah.
No. Thanks for your time, Jeremy. Always a pleasure to have you back on the show, as always, and Dan and Sasha as well. And you guys in the chat box watching. That's our second show today in the space of what was just about 5 hours, and both times over 1,000 of you have been listening, which has been amazing. So thank you so much for the continued support on the channel. Make sure you are showing these guys some love in the comment section if you're watching on catch up, and in the chat box if you are indeed watching live as well. I'll be back as usual tomorrow at 8 a.m. to keep you guys up to date. More updates on Rafinha, I'm sure, are set to come as we try and break down what is going to be an interesting evening of conflicting of reports I can imagine is going to happen. But there's something that I need to go and watch now, and for those that live in the UK will know exactly what I'm talking about without me even needing to mention it. So we're going to wrap up swiftly. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. Drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed it, and even if you haven't, and subscribe to the channel if you are indeed new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. See you soon, and as always, up the Arsenal.